Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, I know it's been a while, but I got some good news for you. We have a DC20 update dropping on March 17th, and I'm so excited. I gotta tell you all about it. Now, if you're watching this video on the day that it is dropping, then you do not have that long to wait. This Monday is going to be, I believe it's version 0.9 is what it's called, and it has so many good things, right? There's a ton of changes. However, this video, I want to talk about one specific addition, and that is going to be the subclasses that are going to be included into DC20 with this update. Now, when 0.9 drops, basically what it's including for a lot of the classes slash subclasses is it's pushing them from going to level 2 all the way up to level 4, which is why the subclasses are included, because every single class in DC20 gets their subclass beginning at level 3, which, by the way, such a great change because it actually lets everyone be on an equal playing field, but I digress. And the way it's going to work is every single class is going to get 3 specific subclasses. They're going to get 2 unique ones that'll go towards kind of whatever style that might be pushed towards. And the third one is going to be a Paragon subclass. Now, I'm not going to explain this for every single individual class, but rather just explain to you what a Paragon subclass is. So, for those of you that are not like me and do not keep up with DC20 religiously, this is something that they announced a bit ago, kind of talking about subclasses, but we're finally going to get to see them. Paragon subclasses are inherently the just innate general belief of the class. And if that doesn't make sense, give me a second. If you are a barbarian, let's say, and you just love the idea of being a big barbarian man and woman and smashing things with your big hammers and being a big tough person, awesome, that's great. That is what the Paragon subclass is meant to do, is it's just going to drive you deeper into what the kind of stereotyped idea class identity is, right? So let's say you want to be a sorcerer. Okay, the Paragon Sorcerer subclass is just going to dive super deep into the innate sorcerer subclass ideology, right? Whereas other subclasses might get a little funky, like if you do something like a wild magic sorcerer, you lean into that wild magic side. The Paragon is just going to really dive into being a sorcerer. What does that mean? What traits do you get? So hopping straight into the classes and the subclasses they're going to be getting, while we don't exactly know what all of these are going to entail, what traits they're going to get, things like that, we do know the 2 subclasses that all of the main classes that are currently included are receiving, so that's what we're going to discuss, and then maybe talk a little bit about what I am most excited for, and then what these subclasses are probably going to receive. So starting off with the tried and true Barbarian, we're going to have our 2 subclasses of the Elemental Fury and the Spirit Guardian. Now for these 2, obviously we can make our guesses. I know that the Dungeon Coach has talked about them somewhat, so some of them we have a vague, maybe slightly better idea than others, but Elemental Fury, you can imagine you're a barbarian that gets to control the elements. Maybe you have fire and wind and ice and earth kind of surrounding you as you do these things, right? Being almost innately magical, but while still being a barbarian. And then Spirit Guardian being a little more tapping into your spirit, and there's a few possibilities and possible ways that subclass could go, but something tapping into your spirit, using that inner soul, right? Not necessarily magical elements, but rather that inner self, right? Doing something along those lines. Now coming up next, we have Druid, and Druid has the 2 options of the Phoenix and Rampant Growth. Both of these sounding super fun. As far as Phoenix, I just really hope there's some kind of rebirth mechanic in there. Now, it might not be something we receive immediately because, again, this is only going to go up to level 4, and these subclasses are going to give you stuff all the way up to level 10. So there's going to be a ton of stuff we don't see yet. But I really hope the Phoenix isn't just like fire and like you get a bird or something, but I really hope it leans into that idea of rebirth, and maybe you either, when you get low or when you drop to 0, you get like a burst of energy or something. I don't know, something like that would be really cool. And then Rampant Growth, hey, if you love some just entangling vines and you love making just leaves and trees and nature grow from nothing, Rampant Growth is assuredly going to be right up your alley. Next up are the Sorcerer subclasses, and these are pretty straightforward. We have an Angelic and a Draconic Sorcerer. Obviously, basically because sorcerers, your magic innately comes from your body. Your magic may be innately angelic, and maybe you have some angelic descendants. And then Draconic, again, very similar, probably have some kind of Draconic descendants, and that dragon elemental energy and magic really flows through you. be really good going for a Dragonborn is all I'm going to say about it. But 2 really solid options, very cool, and I think those actually can do a super cool job of tying into a character's backstory. Up next, everyone's favorite support class, Bard. Now this has 2 fun options. You have your Jester and your Beguiling. I don't know, I forget how to say the word. Beguiling, you know, whatever. Anyway, first off, subclass I'm very excited for is Jester. I think that one is assuredly super fun, can allow for some definitely fun moments, and if you're a very personable D&D player, probably will go well to that. And as for the Beguiling, you know, probably a lot of charm effects, a lot of twisting of emotions, you know, a lot of kind of like controlling the mind of others, that kind of thing. So hey, if you're into that kind of stuff, they got it for you. Now next up we have our subclasses for the Hunter, which is going to be your Trapper and your Monster Slayer. Trapper subclasses always kind of worry me because I love the idea of setting up traps on the battlefield and, you know, having enemies step into your pre-set up plan thing and stuff like that, but the problem is D&D doesn't usually work like that, and you don't usually get a whole lot of time to like set up for a fight kind of thing. Very rarely, so I really hope they do a good job of allowing you to be a little bit more of an active trapper, if that makes sense, rather than just a passive where most tend to go. And then Monster Hunter, Monster Slayer, I mean, obviously, you know, you want to take down the big monstrous beast, you probably get some kind of advantage on, you know, surveying the land when you're tracking or searching for these giant monsters or things like that. So super cool. Again, great options. Next up, we have the Spellblade, which is a class that I personally am just super excited for because magic users that focus on enhancing weapons in my brain has always been a super cool concept. And for all of you Paladin lovers who have been worried about not seeing a Paladin class, this is your day, alright. The Paladin is actually a subclass of the Spellblade, which personally I think is a little better. I think Paladin typically sat in a weird spot of like, yes, it was worthy of its own class, but it kind of felt like a mix of multiple classes. So I think having it as a subclass fits a lot better, just, you know, in terms of how it works and the like general flavor of it. And then on the other side, you have Rune Knight, which Rune Knight seems really cool. I can only imagine that you kind of enhance your weapons by attaching or engraving runes into them in some way, which again, I always love the idea of like having this, you know, your favorite, most powerful sword and you just get to keep enhancing it. So Rune Knight might be one that's right up my alley. Up next, we have your Champion class, which is going to have 2, and that's going to be your Sentinel and your Hero. Nothing wrong with these. I think these are going to be pretty standard. I think in general, Champion is kind of your very stereotypical average adventurer, fighter, hero. Not to say that it is an average class, I'm sure you will be able to do many cool things, but it is for that player that just really wants to, I think, hold down that classic adventurer, hero, you know, idea and ideology and that kind of player. So, not much to talk about. Sentinel and Hero, sounds great. Now next up we have Monk, alright? And for this one we have Shifting Tide and Astral Self. Shifting Tide, I imagine, is kind of the Monk philosophy of flowing in and out of different combat stances and stuff, especially being a Shifting Tide. That is just my guess, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I would lean toward. And then the other one, Astral Self, is, I imagine you get some kind of projection of yourself that you can use to help you fight, whether that be giving you a clone of sorts to use, or maybe it's just something that kind of stays attached to you and gives you advantage on hits or something like that. Who knows? But Astral Self, kind of similar to the Barbarian one, where you're really tapping into your inner soul and using that to your advantage in one way or another. Up next, we have another one that I don't think requires a whole lot of explanation. We have our Warlock subclasses in Eldritch and Fey. Great choices, great options. We always love when Warlocks get their different variations of, we'll say, best friends that they can make their deals with, right? So, you know, if you're with a Fey person, if you're with a Eldritch person, if you're with a whatever the case is, you got some options. I am, funnily enough, curious to see what Paragon Warlock entails. I mean, maybe that's just like kind of your stereotypical demonic influence that you make your pact with. Not 100% sure, but we'll have to see once they release those Paragons. And up next, we have our favorite healer, the Cleric, which has the Priest option and the Inquisitor option, which is interesting because I would imagine a priest to be kind of more symbolic of what the Paragon Cleric would be. So I'm very interested to see what their difference is between a Paragon Cleric and a Priest Cleric. And as far as an Inquisitor, I'm also a little interested. I'm wondering if Inquisitor is going to lean more towards being a battlefield supporty of like you're putting bad conditions on the enemies as opposed to relieving conditions or healing your teammates. That would be my guess. We're just gonna have to find out, because that one, funnily enough, for being usually a fairly simple class, I think provides some of the most questions as far as the subclasses. Coming up on our final three here, we have the Rogue, which has the Swashbuckler and the Long Death option. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm a Rogue fiend. I love me some Rogue. For those of you that watched when I was into Naruto 5e, I was really big into Hunter Nin, which was kind of their version of Rogue. And I'm excited to see where these go. Swashbuckler, I mean, pretty obvious you're kind of going for more the pirate lifestyle of a Rogue, which makes sense. Long Death, I have some questions. And I'm excited, because if there's some good poison subclasses, you know your boy's gonna be eating that up. Now on to Wizard, we have the Witch option and the Portal Mage option, which, can I just say, as far as subclasses go so far, I think that's the most solid they've done. You have your Paragon Wizard, which, you know, is gonna be your, obviously your typical wizard. Then you have Witch, which I like leaning into that witchery, maybe brewing potions, right? Things of that nature, that's always fun. And then Portal Mage, let me tell you, I am a sucker for Portal-esque abilities, because I love the creativity that they tend to give the player that they can do, as long as it's balanced, because portals can be broken if you're not very restrictive and careful with them as a DM. But oh, Portal Mage sounds so fun, and it is, you know, it's up there in terms of my excitement levels for sure. And last but not least, we have the Commander class with its Warlord and Crusader subclasses. Now, I'm interested to see these. I mean, obviously Commander on its own is a pretty like straightforward concept of you are the leader, the commander of your team and your army on the battlefield. When it comes to being a Warlord, that makes sense. You're probably a little more involved in the fight. You're a little more aggressive, a little more, you know, you want to win the battles type style. But Crusader has some interesting ways it could go. So I am super intrigued to see what they decide to do with a Crusader subclass for the Commander. And there you have it. That's going to be all of the unique subclasses coming in 0.9 for DC20. Now again, the ones I am most excited for are the Long Death Rogue, because I am just such a sucker for poison. I love the idea of, like, you know, you play these long con fights against people, and I imagine something like a Long Death Rogue gets a lot of really creative roleplay options in terms of poison, because usually that's what poison is best for. It's less used for the combat and more used for its roleplay purposes, which is always fun. I'm excited to see the Paragon Spellblade, because I just love Spellblades, and you probably noticed when I was talking about it, and so just really leaning into that casting spells to enhance my weapon and just really leaning into that ideology, I absolutely love it. And then my third for my kind of like top 3 subclasses to look out for is definitely Portal Mage Wizard. I think portals are super cool. They allow for the player to be super creative, like I said earlier, because there's the kind of easy logical thing of, oh, well, if you have portals, you can get to places easier. You can do the classic thing of, like, you know, casting a spell from where you are, but the starting point of the spell being somewhere else because of your portals. But you can start to do really unique things. Maybe you can pickpocket someone. Maybe you can create a portal for your rogue teammate to sneak into somewhere a little easier, right? Some of that teamwork aspect of portals is super, super exciting. Now, I know this video's already probably been a bit, so I'm gonna let you guys go, but let me down in the comments what you are most excited for, what subclass sounds the best to you, because I'm gonna be real, I think almost all of these could provide some super interesting things. It's a little sad that we're only gonna get the first tick or the first set of abilities, so to speak, for these subclasses, but nonetheless, I'm super excited. Let me know down in the comments what you're excited for. And hey, if you're liking the sound of DC20, be sure to hit that subscribe button to find out more as we keep getting more news. Peace out, y'all.